Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk on this April 16th, 2023. Oh my good grief, we have got through the year so fast. It's bonkers. According to this, we have no data. Can you guys see me? Are we broadcasting? Yes, we are. Okay, there we go. That's weird. For some reason, it was telling me we had no data going to the stream, but we do now, apparently. Anyway, the internet is being weird. I don't know why. Anyway, good evening, everybody. Kyle has been on the naughty step, but he is no longer on the naughty step, and he still has his blue wrench. He accidentally deleted the question, the first question that Ron posted, which we will get to, because fortunately, even though it's deleted and you guys can't see it, I can still see it. So it's still there. I'm able to see it and I'm able to read it, which is cool. Yes, thank you. I am live. That's good. Okay, cool. I thought I was. It's just YouTube Studio basically said no data, and I was just like, oh. And I checked with OBS, and OBS is like reading very good numbers. So, and we have a green light. So, I don't know what's going on. So we're just gonna have to make it up as we go along a wee bit. We've got a good couple of questions that should generate plenty of good discussion here, which is what this show is all about. So if you are new and you have not been here before, welcome. I'm glad you are watching and I'm glad you're here. You may find that you cannot say anything in the chat. It's just not working for you. And there's a very good reason for that. You will need to subscribe to the channel in order to be involved in the chat. And I would love you to be involved in the chat and have an opportunity to ask a question and get to know the other folks that are here. Pretty much everybody in the chat are all friends of mine, which is very, very cool. And we have a nice growing community here, which is fantastic to see. And I would love to keep it growing. So please hit the subscribe button down there somewhere and hit that notification bell as well. And select all notifications. That way you don't miss either my Sunday night show or my Wednesday night Songwriting Simplified show. And you also don't miss any other content that is coming through the course of this year. There's going to be some very cool stuff coming. Excuse me. Now, I know I keep saying there's going to be some very cool stuff. Well, there really, really is. I've been working very hard on a bunch of things. So, and I'm really looking forward to getting those out to you. But I can't really talk about them because they are very, very top secret. But nonetheless, they will definitely be coming to you. So we've got plenty of people here already, which is awesome. Please hit that like button if you like what I do here. And certainly by the end of the show, if you have enjoyed the show and you've appreciated everything that I've done and you have learned something along the way, then please do hit that like button as well. Hitting the like button is incredibly helpful, which is very cool. So let's go see who's here. Now, as I said, Ronald Figura was the first one in the chat here. And I'm actually going to unpin his post because you guys can no longer see it, so there's no point in pinning it. So anyway, Ronald was here first, followed by Billy Morgan and Kyle, and Kevin's Guitar Stories, and Paul Morgan, and Studio One Tuts. That's my friend Rich, who is also here in his other persona as well. And Mike Johnson from Music to Motion is also here. And who else do we have? We have Peace Valley Audio. That's my other good friend, Mike Neighbor, who is here, who is a fantastic musician and a fantastic photographer as well. So you should go check out his photography because the guy's got talent, seriously. So if you need a photographer for anything, whether it's to photograph your band at gigs or that kind of thing, get in touch with him at Peace Valley Audio. He would be very, very glad to assist you. I can guarantee it. So continuing on, we have, as I said, Billy Morgan. We got Paul Morgan, no relation, and we've got my fabulous sponsor, Alps Media LLC. That's my good friend Louis, who is here as well. We got Boris Dancy, who is here, and we got John Edgar, and we got Don Oliver as well. We got loads of people here, and of course, I say we got Rich Cresswell in his other persona, and we got Dave at Bobs NY as well, and we got Christopher Mrakner. I will never ever pronounce your last name properly, I apologize, but I think it's Mrakner. That's going to be my best effort. And we've got Papa Raptor Music as well, and we've got Producing in the Box as well, who is awesome as well. You should check out all the content on his channel because it is superb. He has been putting out a lot of great content, and sign up to his email list. That's the other thing I would suggest you do. And we got United Effect here as well, which is great. And we got, good grief, the chat just jumped ridiculously. We got Old School Funk and Soul. We got Zap, who is here, who I think is new. Welcome, Zap. Hello, good to see you. And we've got who else do we have? We got Juan as well. Juan is here, and who is waving with a kind of large pink hand, which is very cool. I've never seen that before. And we got Secret Squirrel here. We got Just Bob, and I think I've reached the end, which is very, very cool. So awesome! I made it to the end. All right, so let's get into this. As you may have gathered, those of you that don't know me, I am from Scotland, and this is where we are. We are in the Midlothian region of Scotland, just kind of southeast of Edinburgh. We're a wee bit southeast of Edinburgh, but outside of town of the main city of Edinburgh, which is nice. I lived in Edinburgh for 16 years, which is where all of this started, really was in Edinburgh, which is cool. All right, so let's get to Ronald's question, and then there's another great question from Rich Cresswell as well. We got 25 people here. You guys are awesome. Thank you very much to my moderators and my friends in the Ned Wells group for advertising and promoting the channel and promoting the show as well. You guys are fantastic. I love you very dearly. But yes, if you like what I do here, and this is your first time here, thank you for coming. I hope you enjoy the show. And if you have found this show and what we talk about here to be valuable, then please do go spread the word and tell your friends, and tell your friends' tennis partners, and your friends' tennis partners' husbands and wives, and your friends' tennis partners' husbands and wives' friends, and their tennis partners, and all of that. That would help me a lot. All right, so Ronald's question. I don't know what that whole thing about tennis partners was, but there we go. I'm not really a massive tennis fan, except when Andy Murray is playing. So Ronald Figura says, when receiving collaboration data, it has a predefined file path, which I prefer not to use. There is no way to change it. Is there a setting for that somewhere or a workaround? All right, so this goes to the new collaboration tools that you have if you are a member of Personosphere and you are working with somebody in using those collaboration tools in the workspaces, and the integration that there now exists in Studio One version 6.1, which is fantastic. It's incredibly powerful and incredibly useful. I work with a bunch of clients doing session work, doing it this way, and it's great. So much better than using Dropbox, which is what I used to do. I used Dropbox for years, and now I don't need to, except for folks that don't use Studio One and they're not interested in Personosphere, in which case I work with them with Dropbox, and I have Dropbox in my Studio One browser via the Files tab, and you just right-click the Dropbox folder and you just do New tab from here, and boom, you can just drag and drop your audio files straight into Dropbox. It's great. That works fantastically, but this is talking about the new collaborative tools, which are great. So I'm going to show you what Ronald's talking about and how it currently works. So let's get over to Studio One. and we'll get me in the bottom corner there. And if we find that anything gets covered up by me, I will just turn off my camera so that you can see the screen entirely. All right, so you'll notice if you go into the Songs tab on the Start page that you have all of your shared songs. These are all songs that you are working on in a collaboration with somebody via the workspaces. So I've got a few here that I'm working on with different people. And as you can see, as I hover over each one of them, the file path that those songs are based on my computer are listed here. So this one I updated today, and there's some new files. And this one is in on my D drive in songs, and then there's a songs folder within that. And then there's Blues Pop brackets 2, and the song is called bluespop.song. So I know exactly where this is, but as you can see, there are two versions here. And I set this up deliberately so that there were two versions so that I can show you how this works, because I was just like, how am I going to be able to do this to show you how this works? So I'm going to show you how it works to receive files that the person you are collaborating with has added to the song, and then they've saved that song. And so there is now a new version of that song that is now in the workspace. So the first thing you need to do is you need to click on your little avatar at the top here. And now you will see I've already updated this one. But as I said, I made this second version. So this folder has been updated in the Jazz Club workspace. And so if I click on Receive, you'll notice that now this opens up. Now it says everything is up to date, but I went ahead and did this so that basically you could see this dialog box. See, the local folder here is Songs, Blues Pop 2. And we know that that is the file path that I just showed you by hovering over this. And it says everything's up to date. And everything has been received. So there are a bunch of other files that were here. Now what happens is if you click on this down arrow before you hit the start button, you'll see a list of things here. So you'll see it'll say the .song file, so bluespop.song, and it'll say replace. So basically these are all pending actions that will take place when you hit this start button. And so it will replace the song, and then it will update it. It will drop a new version of that song in this location. All right. And it will add to it not only the existing files, but also files that have been added to that song. So this is very, very cool. It's very, very powerful. So basically means whomever you're working with, all they need to do is, there's a feature. If I just hit cancel on this, if you go to File, Collaboration, there's a send button here and a receive button. So when you're working on your song, if you hit send, then that means any new files that you add to that song will be sent to the workspace, to the song folder on the workspace. And then you'll get a notification just like this one that will say receive. So the person that you're collaborating with will get new files when they click on this word receive, and then they hit the start button in that dialog box, and boom, that song gets updated. So you have everything that your collaborator has done in your song. So this is how it works. Now, Ron's question, if we go back to it, was he says it has a predefined file path. Now, here's the thing. The only file path it has is the file path that you set when you first started the collaboration. When you first start the collaboration, that is the file path that is chosen. You can define that at the start, but once you have started it, there's no way to go and change that file path. Unfortunately, it's just not something you can do as yet. The reason being, I suspect that you can't do it is because it could get a little bit messy, because you have to redirect the collaboration integration with the workspace to your new file location, the new location on your computer. So if you move it from the current file path to a new one, what it might end up doing is it might end up creating two versions of the same song in two different locations. So that's the thing you kind of want to be a little bit careful about if you try and move locations around. So that's just something to be aware of. Now, there is no way for me to test that as it stands. There's no way for me to test that. The only way I can test that is to create a new collaboration and then basically mess with the location of that collaboration and see what Studio One does. But otherwise, there's no way for me to really test it as much as I would like to be able to test it live on screen for you guys to see. I don't think I can actually do it. But I am going to work with my colleagues in technical support and in QA and see if there is a potential hazard there that Ron is flagging up. And we'll see. We'll see if that can be changed, if that's a thing. But I'm going to investigate that further with tech support and with QA, and we'll see what we can come up with. Or, if it's just the way it is, then it is just the way it is. But like I said, there's no real way for me to test that, unfortunately. But that is currently how the integration works, is that when you start a collaboration or you join a collaboration, at that point you get to set where it's going to be saved on your end, your local end. Everybody has a local end, believe it or not. So that's the thing. You have the workspace, and then the workspace is linked via some voodoo magic that is done behind the scenes to your local file path on your computer. Now, for the most part, that is set within your Studio One options or Studio One preferences, locations, user data. So in this case, my user data path is set to d:// songs. All right. So that's where everything is going. Now, what you might find is that if you have, say, d:/Studio One songs, it might create another folder called songs and start working in there. It's entirely possible that might be something that happens. I've not seen it happen yet personally, but the only time I've ever seen a new songs folder created was when I basically copied my songs folder from my old computer to my new one so that I could continue working on old songs when I got this new computer in 2020. And so that created a new songs folder, but I've not seen it automatically create a new songs folder when I do a new collaboration with anybody. It just goes songs and it just creates a new folder there. So if I go over here to songs, now we know it's in the second songs folder because that's the file path that is listed here. Blues pop. All right, so we know that that's here. And if I click on this, you'll see that there's another folder in here called .sync. This is the folder that is required because in here there is a sync state file. And this is the file that actually does the integration between the local song and the song folder that is in the workspace. It is this file that where all the magic happens. So don't delete this, otherwise you will sever the connection. All right, and then you have a history folder, which has all the autosaves in it, and then you should have media folder that has media stuff in it. And then when you open the song up, it should open up with everything that you need. All right, so that's kind of how that works. All right, cool. So Ronald says thank you. Cool, nay bother, mate. So that's how that works. So I'm going to close my folder there. Christopher says he's sitting on his end. Well, that's good. I'm very glad. Just make sure all your files are closed before you sit down. Let's go back over here. So that was a slightly tricky question. Because I can't entirely show it live, unfortunately. All right, let's get to the second question. And this one comes from Rich. He says, on the topic of weird versions of music, what are your thoughts on music that would juxtapose each other well? And this I think has been inspired by a conversation that Rich and I have been having before we started the show, where we were talking about I think Jupiter from Holst the Planets being done by a particular orchestra, and they've done it a little bit kind of techno reggae or something like that. And so it was a kind of orchestral thing, but it was kind of with this weird kind of techno reggae kind of vibe to it. And that got me thinking about a version that I had heard of the same movement from Holst the Planets that had been done by another orchestra, but they had also given it a bit of a dubstep vibe. And it actually worked really quite well. It was weird, but it worked. So I think this is kind of where Rich has got inspiration for this from. So we will go with this. And I would love to hear your suggestions, not just of wacky juxtapositions, but juxtapositions that actually work and sound good. So fusions of different styles and different genres of music that actually work. So definitely you could do orchestral funk. I have heard that done really, really well by the Metropole Orchestra. Especially when the Metropole Orchestra worked with Snarky Puppy. And so you had the whole 21-piece Snarky Puppy plus the 80-strong Metropole Orchestra together, and it sounded absolutely flipping awesome. So definitely orchestral funk can certainly be done really well, and of course the Metropole Orchestra plus Corey Henry from Snarky Puppy had done a really interesting arrangement of Michael Jackson's Billie Jean, which worked also really, really well. So orchestral pop, orchestral funk, orchestral jazz has been done. The Buddy Rich Band, or rather Buddy Rich actually as the featured solo artist, did a version of a medley from West Side Story with the Boston Pops, conducted by John Williams. And actually it was his arrangement that he had done with Buddy Rich as the featured solo artist. And that's also knockout. So in the chat, definitely get some of those kind of juxtapositions in. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on that as well. So definitely orchestral funk, orchestral jazz. I've definitely heard those kind of things done very, very successfully. But what do you guys also have to say on that? That would be great to hear. That's a good question. Let's see. I'm just going to go through. and see what we've got here. So I'm going to address another question whilst you guys are starting to get that in the chat. Secret Squirrel says, would you be so kind as to convey an instance or example by which you would consider a piece as 8/8 versus 4/4? This is a good question. And this comes up fairly frequently. A lot of people don't understand the difference between common time and cut common. What does cut common mean? Well, cut common means that the pulse, instead of being 4 quarter notes, becomes 2 half notes. And there's a couple of reasons why you might have cut common instead of common time. This comes up quite a bit in marches. It also comes up quite a bit in samba music in particular. Now, samba music and other Brazilian forms has a lot of syncopation and a lot of polyrhythms and cross rhythms. So you want to notate those in the simplest note values you can to make it easy to read. So if you're reading lots and lots of 16th notes with 16th note rests, it can become cumbersome to read at sight and a little bit tricky at sight to work out what the rhythms are. So sometimes you might see something that is like a samba and you'd see this rhythm da 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 da, and you might think, oh, that's going to be 16th notes. And you might well feel it as 16th notes, and you might feel the pulse as a quarter note pulse. But when writing that down, you may want to consider writing it in cut common time. And when you do that, you turn the music basically into 2/2 instead of 4/4. 2 half notes to the measure instead of 4 quarter notes to the measure. When you do that, instead of having 16th notes, those now become 8th notes with 8th note rests. Those are easier to read at sight than lots of 16th notes with 16th note rests. So this is where that would be a good example of simplifying the reading by using cut common time. So to get to this particular question where you've got 8/8 versus 4/4, you might have 8/8 if the particular piece of music uses 8th notes a lot, but it shifts where those 8th notes are in the measure. So there might be some syncopation, or there might be rhythms that go actually over the bar line. And so you might want to think of that as in 8/8, so 8/8 notes in the measure instead of 4 quarter notes, to make it easier to place those notes in the right place when you're playing the rhythms. That is a good example of that. I've seen that happen, and you see this more in brass band pieces and some orchestral works, where you've got different groups of 8th notes and you've got shifting 8th notes, where you maybe have a particular figure and then that gets shifted by an 8th note, and then shifted another 8th note, then another 8th note, then another 8th note, and then another 8th note. So the same figure gets moved by 8th notes. And so it is easier to count that in 8th notes than it is to count that against a quarter note pulse in some circumstances. So that's where that is a good situation to use a time signature of 8/8 rather than 4/4. And then, of course, the other example I cited there of using cut common instead of 4/4 is another example. You want to lower things down to the lowest common denominator by which a musician is going to be able to read your rhythms at sight precisely and accurately, particularly with very rhythmically complex music. So I hope that that helps answer that question. That's a great question. Let's see, what else do we have? Orchestral Klingon polka. Now, interesting that you should mention polka, because I have heard I have heard polka mixed with Brazilian music, and polka is European and Brazilian. You would think they are kind of juxtaposed, but you can actually make them work. You can actually have a polka and something like a rumba, a particular type of rumba, not as traditional rumba. It'd have to be something that is a little bit more Spanish flavored rumba rather than the Brazilian rumba. But you could certainly juxtapose rumba with that pretty well. Let's see. John Haythwaite says, it is also a thing to consider that different band members may count a song differently depending upon their own parts. That may well be true as well. That may well be true. But when you're working as a band, you want to make sure that there is an agreed placement of the downbeat in the bar. So where beat 1 is in the bar. So quite often, and this happens to me when I'm working with musicians from actually the Middle East or Israel or Central Africa or somewhere like that, where quite oftentimes their music is very complicated metrically. So you've got like a bar of 7/8 followed by a bar of 9/16 followed by a bar of 9/8 followed by a bar of 7/8 again, and then you get a bar of 3/4, and so you've got all of these different time signatures. What I tend to do, rather than just trying to read it all at sight and go, okay, that's that, okay, that's that, and trying to calculate it and work out where to place the notes metrically by using math, because I'm not really a math guy, I don't tend to work like that. So I will look for a common pulse. And more often than not, in these kind of musics, like Israeli folk music, there is a common pulse. Even if the time signature is changing around it, there is a common pulse. And, the phrases just shift either forwards or back. And when you think of it like that, you find a common pulse and you move everything forward or back accordingly, then actually you play the music just fine. So I've been in a situation where everybody is just, they're doing these things in different time signatures and it's incredibly complex. I have found that actually if I take all of these time signatures across these 8 measures, fundamentally it all works out to be 8 measures of 4/4. And so that's how I think of it. I go, okay, it's essentially 8 measures of 4/4. It's just that where the strong beats and weak beats are is just moving about a wee bit. And I go, okay, that's fine. That means I can just tap my foot away to 4/4 and I can play these phrases over that. But that's not to say that I'm not aware of where the downbeats are. I'm always aware of where the downbeats are, because that's something that is essential. You need to know where the downbeats are. So even if you're not going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever the counting might be. So that's definitely one way to do it. So counting each individual beat, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 for 7, that might work for you. It might work for John Haythwaite, might not work for me. In fact, it doesn't work for me. I don't think numbers. I think shapes for the most part. For rhythms, I think shapes. I'm always aware where beat 1 is, but I think in shapes. And I think I've talked about this a length before. So it's either shapes or it's words. So I think of a rhythm as a word, which maybe speaks to some of my IT friends here who maybe know a little bit of assembly language where, a certain number of characters is a word. Um, and so that's how I think of rhythms. I think of them as a word. So, for example, if I see 2/8 notes, I'm going to come up with a 2-syllable word that will fit that. So, let's say I take the word house, but then I put an accent on the E to turn it into a 2-syllable word, just because house is an easy word to remember. So if I go housey, so now I've got a 2-syllable word. Okay, what about a 3 for triplets? How about triangle? There's a 3-syllable word, triangle. Okay, now great. I can do 5/8 or 5/4. I can go housey triangle, housey triangle, housey triangle. Great, I can now do 7 because I can do housey, housey triangle, housey, housey triangle. I can do 9. I can either feel 9 as 3 triangles, triangle, 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 triangle. Or I can go housey, housey, housey triangle, housey, housey, housey triangle. And see, that makes time signatures and time signature changes easy for me. And particularly if I'm working, like I said, with Middle Eastern music, where you get a lot of those 7/8, 7/8, 5/8, 7/8, 9/8, 7/8, 5/8. I can play with those. And if somebody is improvising, they're going right over the top of this. Sometimes I've worked with somebody and, everybody's just playing along, and maybe you've got a soprano sax player improvising away. And then, maybe the vocalist picks up a cowbell and they just start hammering out quarter notes. And you go, oh, they're just hammering out quarter notes. Everybody's playing in these weird time signatures, and he's just going doink, 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 doink on the cowbell, and it goes right across everything. But it fits perfectly. So there's that as well. So you can think of things in 4, you can think of things in 7 and 5, you can think of things in 3-syllable words and 2-syllable words, 3/2, 3/2. So that's another way in which you can count things simply and easily when it's complex. I find that when you're looking at complex music, try and distill it down to its simplest values, and then use that as your framework and your foundation upon which everything else is laid. And then you will find that you can play right across the bar line in any time signature that you may ever encounter. And you may be able to play any figure, any metric modulation within all of those time signatures that you come across, because you distill it all down to its foundational level, to its simplest, barest bones, and then you go, okay, everything is built on the top of that. And away you go. It's, to be honest, the best way to make music, especially when you're making music with musicians who are not Western and they have no Western understanding of music whatsoever. So you can't say to them, oh, you're playing in 7/8 here. Oh, that last bit there, that's in 5/16. They'll go, what? Hey? They know nothing about that kind of thing. Especially, folk musicians who are not educated in the Western system, they'll have no idea what you're talking about. So this is where you can agree things simple like triangle and housey to get across something that you can both agree on rhythmically. And, you have a bottom line that you all agree on, whatever the language is that you adopt to make it happen. So I hope that answers that question. Isn't polka dotted? It can be. It doesn't have to be, though. And you can certainly make a rumba dotted if you wanted to. Possible to do. Thank you for clarifying the time signature 8/8 use case for me. By chance, do you happen to know if PreSonus released any hardware during this weekend's NAMM? PreSonus are not at NAMM, and neither are Fender. There are a number of music manufacturers who are not there this year. That includes Fender, that includes PreSonus, that includes Gibson, I believe, who are not there either. And there are a few. So no, nothing was released at NAMM because we're not there. Pretty much since the pandemic, some music manufacturers took a decision that they were going to do things a wee bit differently, because things like trade shows like NAMM and like Imsterfester and a few others are kind of, well, they're kind of dying a bit of a death, to be honest, because a lot of manufacturers have had to, during the pandemic, start to go direct to customers or direct dealers. And so things like trade shows make less and less sense. You know, trying to gather, you know, let's say you are a German manufacturer. You've then got to fly all of your stuff, all of your new gear, and all of your evangelists to the United States. That costs a lot of money to do that. So there's a lot of manufacturers for which that doesn't make really a whole lot of sense. And so a lot of people are just going, well, you know what? Let's just go direct. And so that's what a lot of people are doing. And I don't think that's any big secret that there's a lot of companies out there that are doing that. And events like NAMM are probably going to, in the foreseeable future, not be a thing anymore. But yeah, there's the answer to that question. Mike Neighbor says, if I understand what you're talking about, I combine electronic and orchestral all the time, just how I write. Yes, that's certainly true for you. Just Bob says, Skald is a French Nordic folk group using traditional instruments and language mixed with metal overtones. Odd combo, but it works amazingly well. That's not something I'm very familiar with, by the way. John Hathby wants more cowbell. Yeah, I probably can provide that at some point. Sean White Jr. says, this is where getting to know the phrase is more important than counting. Good example is the piece Bayou Breakdown. Yes, certainly. And actually, a lot of this is true for samba and frevo and marcha, you know, Brazilian music, where it actually, a lot of it is done much more by feel than it is by, you know, strict adherence to notation. Although, because frevos and marchas have a very, very, very strong pulse to them, because they're essentially marching music, Brazilian marching music, they have that really strong sense of pulse about them. So you're working in 2/2 for the most part. And so you're feeling the 1 and the 2 and the 1 and the 2, the left, right, and everything goes around that. So it's really a two beat pulse when you're dealing with samba, frevo, marcha, mambo, salsa. It's always got that 1, a 2, 1, a 2, and everything is built around that, which is why it's when you see those kind of music's written down, it's notated in cut common, because it's dead easy to read, and therefore it's dead easy to play. But yeah, that's a good point. And John Hathwaite says, feel is everything. Absolutely. Knowing where the 1 is fundamental, and everything else kind of goes from there. So, you know, I've always thought of rhythm as being like an elastic band. You know, a lot of people think that rhythm is kind of very strict and metric, and there's a bar line here, there's a bar line here, there's a bar line here, there's a bar line here. To me, I've never really thought of rhythm that way. I've always thought there is an anchor point, and that is beat 1, and then you can kind of stretch an elastic, you know, tie an elastic band to this anchor point, and then you can stretch it, ping, let it go, and you're on to the next one. And that's really as far as I think of rhythm, which is why when oftentimes when I'm working with other musicians, I will do that. I will stretch and release. I'll build a lot of rhythmic tension and then let it go. And I always land on the 1, because I know where that is. The 1 is built into me instinctively. It's not something I even need to count for. I just know instinctively exactly where it is. Doesn't matter the time signature, doesn't matter the style of music. I know where the 1 is. And once I'm anchored onto that, then I can do whatever I want. I can play fast and loose with where the bar line is, or I can just ignore the bar line altogether, and I can play right across the thing. And it makes for a lot of fun music making, to let yourself go from, strict metricism and a strict adherence to a bar line. It can make for very, very interesting music making and a lot of fun when you're improvising. Peter Brooks says, don't you still do the Wednesday show? Yes, I do. I absolutely do. I took a break last Wednesday. I have been out of town. It was mine and my wife's wedding anniversary, so we went out of town for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday and Saturday. And we just came back today. So I've only been home for about 3 or 4 hours. But we had a fantastic break. And I needed a break. So sometimes it is important that I take a break. But yes, the Wednesday show will be back on Wednesday this week at 6 p.m. Central for Songwriting Simplified. So we will be continuing to talk songwriting and songwriting techniques and all of that stuff. So if you've got songwriting questions and arranging questions, composing questions, music theory questions, the Wednesday show is the best place for those. And here we talk a little bit more technical about Studio One and about music production. But I have allowed a couple of kind of music theory questions to slip in here as well. Just because I can, and I'm in charge. This is my show, so. So, One Drop Reggae. Yes, I love One Drop Reggae. Let's see. Anything else? Medieval music with a Colombian percussionist. Cool. Awesome. Oh, I'm not reading the whole thing. John Hathwaite says, it really becomes fun when you have percussionists from different cultures and you have to work together in a live jam. Definitely, I have done that. I have worked with Brazilian percussionists and then Senegalese percussionists. And it's just like, neither of them talk the same speaking language, but neither of them also talk the same musical language. But once I got both musicians to go, here's the one, and they went, yes, that's where the one is, then they just started to play, and it made for fantastic, glorious music making. And it was great because you had Brazilian percussionists, Senegalese percussionists, and then you had some Western percussionists as well. Some orchestral percussionists, and then some Latin American percussionists, and you had a couple of drummers as well playing drum set. And it was awesome. And just the complexity of rhythms that people came up with were great. It was terrific fun. United Effects says, yeah, crossing the bar lines is so important, especially fun when improvising. Seems like I should be tuning into the Wednesday show. Yeah, I think you'll find the Wednesday show helpful as well. Christopher says, notation in the future with Studio One. You can do notation already. There is a score editor built into Studio One, which if you did not know, I can show you. So if we go back over to Studio One. So this is what you see when you start a brand new song. So if we go and grab an instrument, let's go and grab presence, and let's go and grab, let's see, let's go and grab the full piano. And we'll use that, and I'm going to show you how you can get some score notation going. So the first thing you can do is you can double click here. That will only give us 1 bar. We don't want 1 bar. We want 4. So now I double click this, and then I can click on this little treble clef here. And when I click on this, now you'll only see a treble clef. Now, if you're a piano player, you want the grand staff. So we click on track, and it says here apply staff preset. So let's click on that, and let's look for piano. So that's going to be in keyboards, and there's the piano. So let's click on that. Bingo, we now have the piano with the grand staff. Now you'll also notice that the track has also helpfully renamed itself to piano. Yay, perfectly helpful. So now we've got our grand staff. We can change the key signature of the music. Let's say we want to do this in B flat. Now we've got the key signature for B flat. And we can add some notes. So I can select the pencil tool. I can grab a half note here and I can go D, B flat. I did not want to do that just there, so I'm going to Control Z that. Oh dear, that's not good. Why has that happened there? I'm not quite sure what's going on here. It's not doing what I want it to do, so I'm going to do that instead. And then I can come down here and I can go. And now we've got ourselves a nice G minor chord. Now, if I stick in, let's say, an A here, can you let me do it? It wants to, but it's not wanting to. No, you're not going to do it for me, are you, today? I want to stick a ninth in here, but it's not letting me do it, and I don't know why it's not letting me do it. But it's okay. So you can enter in notes like this. You can enter in notation like that. Or you can play in the notes. All right. So let's get rid of all of that. So let's range select. I said let's range select all of that. And let's go delete. And then if I go back up here, let's stick the click on. And we'll give ourselves a nice little pre-count. And we'll drop this tempo down a wee bit to a nice andante. And I'll hit record. Now if I stop, you will see that all the notation has been written. And you'll see that because basically I have the volume on this very, very quiet, I couldn't really hear the click very well. So some of my playing's a little bit out of time. And of course, this is pretty unforgiving score editing. All right, so it is entirely possible you can play the notes in and you can display them either as what you would normally expect to see or in notation form in the score editor. Cool thing is here is you can send this to Notion, which is the software specifically designed for notation that we have. It's called Notion 6. So you can do that by going to Song, send to Notion. And I'm going to send to, oh, it's wanting to send it to my iMac. Why is it wanting to do that? So let's cancel that for a second. Let's open up Notion Mobile. I can do this to Notion 6 as well, but I'm going to do this to Notion Mobile just because I don't tend to show you guys Notion Mobile very much. So let's open that up and then let's go song, send to Notion, Notion Mobile on this computer, send note data of selected track or send note data of entire song. So in this case, I just want to do send note data of selected track. But you could do this. You could do the top one. And then we'll go and we'll hit send. And now you'll see that it is opened up in Notion Mobile. Now Notion Mobile is specifically designed for notation. I can continue to record this using the record setup here. I can put the click track back on, counting bar 2 bars, split point C4, and I can close that and I can go back here and I can hit the record button here. Now we can stop. Now, as you can see, that's now added a whole bunch of more notation, which is very, very tiny. So I can make it even bigger. So now I can go back and I can play everything that we just recorded into Studio One, as well as what we just recorded directly into Notion. All right, so there you go. Go back to Studio One, and now we've got our original note data. So there you go. So we've covered a little bit of what I actually kind of wanted to go over a little bit in Songwriting Simplified, because I don't really show Notion very much. And Notion is very, very useful if you want to do lead sheets or chord charts or full orchestral arrangements or big band arrangements, whatever you want to do. Notion is very, very good for this. The score editor in Studio One has some basic tools, which are essentially Notion inside of Studio One. So you have a few basic tools available inside of Studio One in the score editor, whereas with Notion 6 or Notion Mobile, there's a lot more. There's a lot more tools available, as well as a lot more sounds. So if you're a member of PersonaSphere, you have Notion 6 already. You can also download Notion Mobile from any of the app stores. So for Windows on a PC, you get that from either the Windows, the Microsoft Store, or on a Mac, you can get it from the App Store. iOS, you can get it from the iOS App Store. If you are on Android, you get it from Google Play. And you need to have Google Play installed on your Android device in order for it to work. And it's really, really useful. You can, if you've got like an iPad or something like that, and you've got one of these guys, the Apple Pencil tool, you can actually handwrite directly onto the iPad, and it will convert your handwritten notation into printed notation instantly. It recognizes the drawing that you do and converts that into the note values and pitches that you want. It's very, very cool. I use it quite a bit. Let's see. United Effects says that's so useful. Arcadian Serpent says I'd love a whole episode on Notion. Yep, I've got some Notion stuff coming up. What is noticeable, says John Hathaway, is that some of the notes should have been grace notes. Yeah, some of them were. Some of them were actually just bad timing on my part. I was trying to play whole notes, but I couldn't hear the click track because I had it turned down really low so it wouldn't bleed back into the mic. So yeah, it just ended up as being missed timings. It's not a big deal. But you are able to write grace notes in Notion pretty straightforwardly. And of course you can go and edit all of these. It's pretty good for editing. All right, so we are at the end of the show. Folks, thank you very much for your great questions. There's still actually some really good questions in here as well. But if you have a question that you'd still like to ask and we are out of time for today's show, then please go down to the web email address here. The web email address. Dear God, I sound like I'm from the 1980s. Go down to the web address here, jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, and on the website you'll find there's a Contact Us form. Hit the Contact Us button at the top of the website and it will take you down to the form. Fill that out and that will send me an email, and you can just enter your whole question there. And if I think it's a question I can either address directly, I'll just respond to you via email within 24 hours. Or if I think, hey, actually this will be something for a show, I'll let you know via email and then we'll cover it in the next available Sunday or Wednesday show, depending upon what kind of a question it is. Otherwise, folks, thank you very much for coming. And I don't know if there's going to be an after show or not, after show gathering on Zoom or not. I've not seen Mike post anything. But yeah, if there is going to be one, then there will. It will hopefully get posted before I shut down the Zoom. Shut down the Zoom. Shut down the show. My gosh, I can't think straight. So otherwise, folks, thanks very much for coming. We had a pretty good audience in. Not bad for kind of me being away on vacation and everything. So we peaked at 25 and we've hovered around about 20 or so. So not too bad. I would really like us to get back up towards like the low 30s, upper 30s. The record for most attended so far is actually 35, and that was set for the live stream I did dedicated to Studio One 6.1. So it'd be nice if we get back up towards those kind of levels and maybe even push beyond that up towards 50 or more. That would be great. So if you guys know people who you think this show would be great for, then get them along. We've already got some new people tonight, which is fantastic. Thank you to the new folks for coming, and to new subscribers. You guys are awesome. Thank you. And to my regular folks, thank you very much. To my moderators, you guys rock excessively. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate you all. And until Wednesday, that's the end of the show. So I will see you guys on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified. It's going to be a good one. So I'll see you then, folks. Good night.